Have you ever dreamed about quitting your job? Or maybe not forever, but just taking a break long enough for you to reset and figure out what you want to do next. If you're new here, hi, I'm Julia. I live in New York City, and earlier this year, I quit my corporate 9 to 5 to go on an adult gap year. And one of the questions that I get asked the most is, how can you afford to take an entire year off from work? I feel like financial advice falls into one of two extremes. Either you save every possible dollar, live as frugally as you can, and sacrifice your life now so you can have a better life when you retire, or the complete opposite, which is go live your life, go book that flight, go buy that bag. But I believe in a healthy balance of both. And while quitting my job might have looked like a spontaneous decision, it was only possible because of the financial decisions I had been making for years beforehand. This is not going to be a video about secret money hacks or how giving up coffee will somehow make you rich. Instead, I want to share the 5 money philosophies that have shaped how I save, spend, and invest, and ultimately helped me build enough financial freedom to step away from a traditional job. Saving is often framed around retirement, buying a house, or achieving some arbitrary net worth goal. But for me, money became extremely more valuable when I realized that it can buy me freedom. The greatest luxury money has ever bought me was not a nice designer bag or a fancy vacation. It was the ability to wake up every morning and decide what I wanted to do with my own time. Having savings gave me options. For example, I took a 6-month break before my previous job, and I was able to just do my job search quite slowly. I felt like I had space and time to find one that was a perfect fit for me. Right now, I am doing my startup journey and I'm self-funding it. So the savings that I have gave me a lot of autonomy in the situation. And also, I'm not super pressed about monetizing the product just yet. To me, financial security is not necessarily about never having to work again. I actually like working. Is that crazy? I like being productive, I like building, but I want to be able to choose what I work on. I never want to feel like I have to stay in a job, in a relationship, in a living situation, in a city, just because I can't afford to leave. Long before leaving my job, I did have some rough calculations around how much a gap year would realistically cost me. The basic formula I used was my monthly fixed expenses plus my average variable expenses multiplied by the number of months I wanted to take off plus a safety buffer. So my housing and utilities are around $1,750 a month. Then I estimated another $1,750 for everything else, including groceries, eating out, transportation, shopping, and general everyday expenses. That brought my estimated monthly spending to around $3,500. And I wanted to give myself the option of taking up to 18 months off. So $3,500 multiplied by 18 came out to approximately $63,000. Then I added an extra $20,000 as a buffer because you never know what will happen. Sometimes there's travel, sometimes there's health or medical expenses. And then something that I definitely did not account for, or maybe I did, but I was just really optimistic about it, was how long it would take for me to deflate my lifestyle. And I'll talk about living below your means in one of the later sections, but you definitely need to give yourself some time to adjust to a lower standard of living. So the total amount that I set aside for my gap year was $83,000. That does not mean that everyone needs $83,000 to take a gap year. Your number could be much lower or much higher than mine, depending on your lifestyle, where you live, and what you plan to do during your time off. I learned very early in my career that the money that I don't see is the money that I cannot spend. This might be my most practical tip, and when anyone asks me for financial advice or saving advice, I always give them this. So instead of having my entire paycheck routed to just one account, I actually have it set up so that it automatically routes to many different accounts. Let's say I get paid every 2 weeks. Before the money even reaches me, taxes and my 401k contributions are already taken out. Since I have specific saving goals that I want to hit, I pull that money out first. I have one account for my personal savings, one account for money I set aside for my parents, and a third bucket for money that I plan to invest in the stock market. I decide in advance how much I want to contribute to each of those goals, and that money is automatically routed out of my paycheck before I have the chance to spend it. Then whatever is left in my checking account is essentially free game. So that's the fixed and variable expenses that we had in the formula before. I think a lot of people tend to approach savings as something they do at the end of the month. So after they pay their bills, after they go shopping and eat, and then they save whatever's left over. But usually there's not a lot that's left over. So I am not good at budgeting. I am what I would call a retroactive budgeter. I spend quite intuitively, so most months I rarely look at my statements line by line. I just kind of have an approximate number of how much I usually spend in a month, and I look at that aggregate number, and as long as it falls within the budget that I gave myself and I'm able to pay my bills, great. But I am human, so there are some months where I do spend a little more. And so if there is a month where the bill is quite high, I will actually go back in line by line and assess. I do this quite often on trips because on trips I tend to just kind of spend. So my budgeting process has historically looked something like this. Spend fairly intuitively. I notice when the total seems unusually high. I review everything line by line. I figure out where the money went, and then I adjust my behavior afterward. Up until recently, the system worked really well for me because I already solved the issue of overspending before by automating a lot of the money that I can actually use, and also because I earn more than I spend. So when I decided to take this gap year, I already knew that I had quite good saving and just general financial habits, but I knew that I could definitely use some work on my budgeting. And that is actually the reason why I started using Monarch, and I like to thank Monarch for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Monarch securely syncs with more than 13,000 institutions and puts my account spending, net worth, debt payoff progress, and recurring bills into one clean dashboard. Literally, I have so many different bank accounts, but I was able to sync every single one of them, plus my investments, plus my 401k accounts all into one. I have never been so blown away by a tool in a very long time. I can also separate fixed and flexible spending, customize categories and rules, and use AI-powered insights to understand why my spending or net worth changed without micromanaging every purchase. It's private and ad-free, so you're the customer, not the product. There's also no ads or data selling, and it also uses bank-level encryption and read-only access. It also works on both web and mobile. I honestly just check the app every single morning when I wake up, and it's just the best visualization to start my day. You can click the link down below in my description box or scan the QR code above, and make sure to use my discount code Julia50 for a free trial plus 50% off of Monarch's core tier. I just want to end this section by saying that I do not believe that you need to be the perfect budgeter or analyze every single transaction as it comes. But I do think it's important to at least know the aggregate number, the average that you spend in a month, and be able to understand your habits so that you're able to flag when discrepancies do come up. Okay, this is probably my favorite money philosophy and the one that I live by the most. So I think a lot of personal finance content focuses on cutting out buying coffee outside or buying the cheapest version of things or just eating out less. And yes, those things can definitely help. Definitely do not be irresponsible with your money. Just because you can buy it doesn't mean that you should. But I do believe that there is a limit to how much you can save. But technically, there is no limit to how much you can earn. And I'm not saying making money is easy. It definitely requires time and skill, opportunity, and sometimes a lot of luck. But throughout my 20s, I spent way more energy trying to figure out how I could increase my income than I did trying to optimize every single purchase. That meant negotiating my salary, switching jobs when the right opportunity came along, investing in a side hustle like YouTube so that I'm not just depending on one income stream. Now I have multiple income streams, and learning new skills. Obviously, these increases didn't come overnight. It took me a long time to build up my skill and my repertoire to get that promotion or to get that next better job. It took me years to build my YouTube to a place where I can actually monetize from it and make a salary from it. And there were a lot of sacrifices, like working overtime or working on weekends or working really long nights, but that is an opportunity cost, right? But those decisions ultimately had a much bigger impact on my finances than saving little things here and there ever could. I know you're probably thinking, yeah, like, of course I would like a second income stream, and of course I would like to make passive income as a content creator, but there are things that you can start with, and one of those is definitely negotiating your salary or asking for more. If the job description says 100K base, ask for 130K base. Maybe they'll give you 110, like who knows, right? And I do think that on the internet, everyone just sounds like a broken record. If you just keep hearing people say, you got to negotiate your salary, you got to ask for more. But it is very true. Those little incremental gains, or what you think is little, will definitely compound over time. For the multiple streams of income, you can start somewhere small. Like, I do have friends who, after their traditional 9 to 5s, they go DoorDash or they go be Uber drivers, and then they take that money to invest in something else. I do think there are a million ways to make money out there. It's just one, if you want to, and two, if you have the grit and resilience and ambition to do it. So the moral of this section is that saving is definitely very important. Definitely save. But if you want to grow and actually live the life that you potentially want, I don't think saving will really get you there. It definitely is just finding ways to make more money. Make more money. Make more money. I hope when you sleep tonight, you just hear me say, make more money. With that being said, earning more money is not permission to let every single raise disappear into a more expensive lifestyle. I think one of the biggest reasons why I have been able to save so much is because my lifestyle didn't increase at the same rate as my income. When I started making more money, I upgraded some parts of my life, but not every part of my life. And I still kind of operated as if I made the same amount as before. Like, I didn't really register that I was making more money until I looked at my savings and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I saved so much. I wonder where that money came from. There is definitely a difference between lifestyle inflation and just letting your lifestyle improve as your circumstances improve. I think sometimes people treat suffering as proof that they're financially responsible. They live in an apartment that they hate. They don't spend time with friends because they don't want to eat out. But if living frugally genuinely makes you happy, please do not let me be the judge of that. And I know that everyone has their own circumstances. And I do think that saving habits is somewhat reflective of how we grew up. So I don't mean to judge anyone by that, because a lot of financial habits that I have, I had to proactively change as well. I've had a lot of conversations with my friends around how our parents spend money, and that reflects on how we spend money or how we see money. But personally for me, I don't want to delay my entire life and joy until I retire. And so I think it's really important to figure out what are meaningful things for you to spend on versus things that you can give up. For me, I like to travel. I value living in a walkable, more central area, and I do enjoy eating out with my friends. But there are categories that matter less to me. So one, I don't really order takeout. I prefer to cook. I don't really take ride shares unless I have to. And lastly, my apartment is a prime example. So can I afford to live in a much nicer luxury apartment with in-unit washer dryer and a dishwasher? Probably, but is this place a shithole? Like, I don't think so. There are definitely things that I don't like about this place, especially the bathroom, and that is why I rarely film in there. And this is by no means my dream apartment, but this was a very intentional financial decision on my end. And I would say this is definitely living way below my means in terms of rent. Living below your means does not mean that you're living badly. It just means that there's some space between what you earn and what you spend so that your lifestyle is not always controlling your decisions. That is it for this video. I hope that it was helpful for any of you out there who are thinking about taking a gap year. But even if you're not, I hope these philosophies gave you a different perspective, a different way to think about money. I don't think there's one perfect money philosophy out there, but I do think that it's helpful and important to hear about other people's ways of spending and saving and financial decisions, because it helps us think more intentionally about our own. Let me know in the comments if there are any philosophies that really resonated with you, or if you hated all of my money philosophies, that's okay too. You can also leave a comment, but just please be nice. If there are any other financial topics that you would like me to talk about, or anything pertaining to my gap year, please let me know as well in the comments down below. And if you don't really have any comments to leave me, you can leave me a little money sign. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. See, I told you my apartment is not perfect. It is so loud here. Okay, bye-bye.